Miss Rapson is God, so it doesn't really matter. Thank you all so much for coming. It was, be here now is a concept which I don't know, these last few weeks has been coming to me a lot, and a lot more. And I've always loved coming to church. Even way back I learned about church in my 20s, but in my 30s, I went to church in Boulder, Colorado at a little church called the Chapel of Miracles. Later on, we go to a Unity church in Maui, but I always enjoyed church. And this week, I kind of understand why, because generally, everyone wants to be here. And it's strange to find a place where everyone wants to be. No one's getting paid to be here. No one's coming here against their will. I suppose we went to church as little kids sometimes against our will, but in general, we all want to be here. And there's an incredible feeling in that. And so I'm extremely grateful that all sort of clicked in. And last week, the meditation I just did, I believe in affirmative prayer. I believe commanding the universe what we want, staying in an attitude of love and gratitude, and some miraculous way it comes around to us. And for years, I've done this harmony exercise, which is sort of an exercise in affirmative prayer. And this week, I was sort of researching Ram Dass a lot and a lot of his teachings, and I was lucky enough to meet him back in the day on Maui. I lived on Maui, he lived on Maui at the end of his life. And I found some of his guided visualizations. I've always enjoyed visualization meditation, where they find yourself walking through a forest and you run into these incredible things, but I've never really led one. I tried to lead this one this morning, but I've always loved those. And then we have mantra meditation, where we repeat the same words over and over, and that quiets the mind. And we have mindfulness, where we practice letting thoughts go and staying in the present. But that was my first crack at visualization meditation. So last week, having Diane here was a really great thing. And for years, Diane and I, every week, we would do the harmony exercise together. We'd meet every Wednesday morning and we'd do it. And it was sort of our mastermind. I was on the board of directors, and we had this journey. And so I've also been a member of the church throughout the entire labyrinth creation and manifestation. So I saw how these things were done. And last week we put 6 chairs out in the middle of the labyrinth to do the harmony exercise, and she and I went out there and we were sitting there. And we're sitting at the labyrinth and sort of looking around, waiting to see if anyone else is going to come. And we're looking at all the trees around. This whole garden was separate from the labyrinth. And she says, that bottle brush tree there, that big tree, I bought at the butterfly farm in a little bucket. And she goes, sometimes the hummingbirds come to it. And I've sat out there hundreds of times, never seen a hummingbird yet, right? And so we're just sitting there, and I'm looking up at the tree, and she goes, see, there he is. And the hummingbird comes flying up to the top of the tree. I look at her, I'm like, are you a witch? That's all I could think for a second. I'm like, because the way that it appeared in that moment in time is beyond any coincidence. It's beyond any explanation, unless you explain it with these principles that we're dealing with right here. Beyond the physical, dealing on a place of no fear, of just perfect love. And we can all argue that they live out there, but she created that one for me at that moment in time, and I can't argue it because I saw it in real time. And then we talked about the Pines property. I happened to be the president of the board when we received that property. And we'd been doing the harmony. We just had redone this room, really had put a lot of love into our current situation. And then sort of one door led to another, and Diane was able to open up all those doors to get gifted that property, which now, that money can see this church going forward for a while. So how these things all happen, we have no idea. But staying in the here and now is certainly one of them that seems to work. So I'm going to retell it one more time, but one thing about Diane and I, where did Diane want to be last Sunday? Right here. Where did I want to be? I was really happy to be here. We were in very good moods. The hummingbird didn't hurt anybody to come and see us, That was just a divine thing. So there's an element that we were both extremely happy to be there in that moment. The week before was my wife's birthday, and we went down to this decorator show house, and I told this story last week, but I'll just remind everybody who wasn't here. I saw a backgammon table, and it was across the room, and I'm looking at all the new furniture, and I just thought double sixes. You know, I could roll double sixes over there. And I walked around the pool, and when I finally made it my way to the backgammon table, I picked up the dice, and I rolled double sixes. I mean, they didn't even roll. They just kind of stuck to the ground, and I was like, you know, for a second, I was a little shocked, but then I had to step back and be like, wait. I was promised I wouldn't wipe my mouth. Wait, you know, there was a cause and effect relationship here. I saw that double sixes as clear as a bell before it happened. And now I see it in the past. But if you can see the future clearly, you can already see the past. So what is time? You know, what is this element of future and past when we can really make it all one? And so that was an incredible, those two examples of the hummingbird and the double sixes were perfect examples of how this all works. And Diane told us last week, it's not that hard. Not that hard, but there is things we have to do. So what happens when we don't stay in the here and now? And this is I paid some penalties last week. So my daughter Allison, Allie, she doesn't like to be called Allison, she came from California last week to play volleyball in Miami. The highest level of volleyball, the AVP, the Association of Volleyball Professionals. So we go to, and she's going to play at 9 o'clock. And mind you, if she loses one match, she's going back to California. So we want to see the one match if she loses it, right? Well, we have it all planned out, and we're up nice and early, and we get in the car right around 8 o'clock to be in Miami at 10. We put it in the GPS. We're not going to be there till 10:20. So we're late before we ever even leave the neighborhood. And now, how metaphysically do we handle this like masters? We have a full-on temper tantrum. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. You could have gotten up earlier. We should have left earlier. On and on, right? So now we're in a full tizzy about our past. Well, what do? Now we start thinking about the future. We're going to be late. This is great. We're going to miss the first game. Probably miss the whole match. And so now we're upset about the future and upset about the past. Not a fun car ride, right? Well, we kind of get it together, and we meditate for a minute. She leaves me in harmony, but we never kind of let go of the angst. So now she's my navigator, right? So she's navigating me down to Miami of where I'm going to park for this match. Well, my daughter had pinned her. She knew exactly where my daughter was, but instead of GPSing to there, we GPS to this address at the AVP, which is 14 blocks away from the tournament. And we get in there and we walk to the beach and there's no volleyball and we don't even know to go right or left. And I'm just like, oh my God. Well, now we have to walk like 14 blocks to get to the tournament. So now we're not 20 minutes late, we're 40 minutes late, right? So we have to connect the dots. We have to connect the dots looking backwards. We can't really connect them looking forwards. If you guys have ever seen that Steve Jobs, he gave a graduation speech at Stanford University. And he said, we need to connect the dots looking back. Well, we earned it. We earned parking 10 blocks away, you know? And it was a direct result of us not being here now. I believe, had we seen that first problem, gotten ourselves calm immediately, put in Allie's pin to where we were going, we could have been there on time. I've done it before. I've seen the expansion and contraction of time. I have left somewhere for a half-hour drive and only had 20 minutes and made it on time. And you get there and you're like, how'd that happen? It's impossible. I didn't have the time to get here, yet I'm here on time. And we may have all experienced that in some way or another, but we can contract and condense time. So we don't want to spend much time future tripping, because the only way we really can control the future is controlling the now. And as Neville Goddard says, we don't want to spend one moment in regret, because that is the time that truly we'll never get back. So this week we were also, there's a big wedding. My wife designed a hotel in the last few years. And now she's designing a rooftop bar, restaurant, all this stuff for the hotel. And they're going to have a big wedding there this weekend. So a few of the rooms needed redoing. So somehow on Monday, we bought enough furniture to redo 5 of the rooms. Somehow she got delivered it on Wednesday, and we did 18 rooms of mattresses and 5 rooms fully redecorating in one day. It was incredible. So all morning I worked for City Mattress. All afternoon I worked for City Furniture. But I was extremely tired, but we got it all done. Now, during the day, there was a lot of moving parts. And every time, like, Barry, where are you? And I'd call her on the phone, and there'd be this angsty thing. And every time that happened, a piece of furniture go in the wrong room. No, it doesn't go in that one. Don't throw that bed down. That one stays. And had you just slowed down, been here now, you avoid things like that. You avoid taking things to the wrong room and moving them twice. They just, if you're in the now, in the moment, planned out, everything gets where it's supposed to go. Everything takes care of itself. And I just noticed that. So it's like, we got to get it done now. And as soon as that energy came in, things started to fall apart. And as long as you, so one Ram Dass quote I found, it says, as long as you have certain desires about how things ought to be, you won't see how it is. Because we're trying to place our thing on it. So how does it work? I'm not sure how it works, to tell you the truth, because it's like someone said this morning, how can we explain God? It's beyond understandable. But what we do know is that it does work, and it's just being proven to us over and over and over again over the years. So as some of you know, I've been very fortunate. I've gotten to meet some really cool people in my life. I got to meet Andy Warhol. I got to meet Timothy Leary. And as I was doing sort of this journey into the here and now, I found a quote by Timothy Leary. Now, I was at a party in Hollywood years ago, and I'm standing out on a lawn, smoking a cigarette or something, and suddenly there's this man standing next to me. Just the two of us looking out into the sky, and it's Timothy Leary. And he's like, you know, we're just a speck, but a speck that has awareness. And I'm just like, who is this guy, you know? I'm 20 years old. I'm like, what is this guy doing? But so he had this quote. I think Ronnie might like this. Surfers are the throw-aheads of mankind, not the dregs. Don't worry, Ronnie. They aren't the black sheep of humanity, but the futurists, and they are leading the way to where man ultimately wants to be. The act of the ride is the epitome of the here and now, which is the act of the tube ride is the ultimate form, which is your future is right ahead of you, the past is exploding behind you, your wake is disappearing, your footprints are washed from the sand. It's a non-productive, non-depletive act that's done purely for the value of the dance itself. And that is the destiny of man. Feels good being a surfer, not to be the dregs of society, but it is true, you know, and I'm sure this is why people love their hobby. This is why Patrick loves to go on bicycle rides. When we do these things, we're in the present moment, in the here and now. And you know, I love being in here and now one-on-one, and this is one of the real special things that I find being at Unity, whether I'm up here or down there, is that we're all here together thinking the same thoughts for a little while. I don't know if anybody's ever seen the documentary I Am. It was made by Tom Shadyac. He made a bunch of comedies like Bruce Almighty and Ace Ventura, and he was in an accident and he realized there was more to life than money. And he did a documentary called I Am, if you ever get a chance to see it. And realizing that we're all connected. And when things bad happen, we seem to have an even stronger connection. So how do we do it? How do we stay in the here and now? To me, it comes with practice. We need to be practicing to be in the here and now when we don't need to be. And this is why the harmony exercise has been so valuable to me over the last 5 or actually through since 1985, but particularly during the last 6 years, is because for a little while, for a few minutes a day, I can get into the here and now. So we need to practice getting more present so that we can be more present. In my practice, I always tell people, well, if you're a nervous wreck, that's as calm as you can ever be as nervous wreck. We need to work on the baseline a little bit so we can, because if I can only calm down to nervous wreck, well, I'm not going to be able to work on that baseline while the situation's happening. I have to do it during my time off. So that's why the 10 minutes I find each day, I go into that present moment. So prayer and meditation, exercise, hobbies, all things that just get us in the present moment. And I think that that's where all of our magic happens. So probably the finest, the best quote I found all week, and I've never been a big Ram Dass person, but I read a lot of Ram Dass this week. But he said, I can do nothing for you but work on myself. And you can do nothing for me but work on yourself. And when we realize that we're all one, we're all working on that piece of ourself to create that oneness. And when that happens, life gets so much nicer, just a much better ride. And one last quote, he says, intelligence is the capacity to be in the present. The more you are in the past or in the future, the less intelligent you are. Intelligence is the capacity to be here now, to be in this moment and nowhere else. Then you are awake. So practice, practice, practice. Let us make a sincere attempt. So now, just let us pray for a minute. I'm going to start this prayer off with a moment of silence. Craig appreciates the moment of silence, and I kind of forgot it in the harmony. So let's just start with a little moment of silence. Be here now. Light is eternal, O soul of the cosmos, fill us and light the darkness of night. Go thou with us through all of life's journeys and make us one in thy light. So mote it be. Thank you so much for joining me. Be here now. Stay in the moment this week and all the blessings will come.